This lecture is about the flower. It is really important for us to understand the basics of the flower for at least the first half of the class. The flower is the sex organ of the flowering plants, or the angiosperms. And for the first half of this class, we're going to be identifying plants based upon their flowers. So we need to know what a flower is and all the terminology that's associated with it. So first, I will draw a flower stalk. There's usually a leaf associated with it at some point. There's often a swollen end to it that all the flower parts are attached to. And now I'm going to draw the flower. The flower is made up of 4 whorls of organs. And a whorl is a circular array. So I'm going to be showing you a lateral view of the flower that's been cut so that we can see more clearly where each of the organs are. But most of the time when you look at a flower, you're looking at it from above, from a bird's eye view. So if I draw here the outermost whorl, which are the sepals, and the whorl interior to that, which are the petals, you'll understand that what I'm actually drawing can be shown this way. There's 5 petals, a whorl of petals, and a whorl of sepals. So the sepals are the outermost whorl, the petals are the whorl interior to that, and then there are 2 more whorls, the male and the female whorls in the flower. So that's the word I'm using, is whorl. The sepals are the outermost whorl, and the basic generalized function of the sepals is to protect the flower when it's in bud. So when you see a flower bud, you're basically seeing the sepals. Each one of these organ whorls has both an individual and a collective term, and you're going to need to know both of them. So each individual organ is a sepal, but the collection of all the sepals taken together is called the calyx. Each individual organ is a petal, but all of the petals taken together are called the corolla. And these are the non-sexual parts of the flower, so when you think about the calyx and the corolla taken together, there's another word for that, and that is perianth. You will be hearing these words over and over and over again, and you can watch this particular lecture over and over and over again. And just to give you a sense of how you've experienced a flower in your life up to this point, basically for all of us, when we experience flowers, we're experiencing the petals. The petals are the showy part of the flower. As I said, the sepals, the function of the sepals is to protect the flower in bud. The function of the petals is to attract pollinators. And as a result, they attract us as well. And that's one of the reasons that we care so much about flowers, and we'll be talking about that when we read the essay by Michael Pollan on the tulip. Interior to the petals, the next whorl is the male whorl, the male sex organs. And these organs are called individually a stamen, collectively the andrecium. Andrecium is Greek for house of men. And the stamen, as you can see, is made up of 2 parts. There is a stalk, which is called a filament. Actually, I should write that to the outside. The stalk is a filament. And the business part at the end is called the anther. And the anther contains the pollen grains. And the pollen grains contain the sperm. And this is how sexual reproduction occurs in plants. interior to the andrecium, interior to the stamens, is the final whorl, which is often just a single organ as opposed to many organs, and that's called the pistil. And so this organ is the pistil. That's the female part of the plant. The pistil consists of three parts. There's a stigma, which is usually a sticky part at the tip, and that sticky part is where the pollen grains adhere, to which the pollen grains adhere. There is a style through which the pollen grains grow, and there is an ovary, the same term that we use in animals. So the ovary is the important functioning female part of the flower. Inside the ovary, if we look inside the ovary, we will see one to many ovules. And inside each ovule is the ovum. When we think of sexual reproduction, we tend to think of the major act of sexual reproduction being a sperm fertilizing an egg. But of course, biologically, a sperm is fertilizing an ovum. We use the word egg to stand in for ovum. Inside the ovules are the ova, or singular ovum, and it is in those ovules that fertilization takes place. Now, a couple interesting facts come out of all of this, facts that have to do with your everyday life experience that you probably never thought of before. When everything goes right here and pollination takes place, that is, pollen grains find their way onto the stigma, being brought there by an insect or a bird in the wind, and then the pollen tube grows and puts sperm in the ovule, and fertilization takes place in the ovule. If all that goes right, then maturation of the ovary occurs. The rest of the organs of the plant generally wither away and die. Generally, that's not always the case. But the ovary is the really important part. And when the ovary is fully mature, we call it a fruit. And that's the correct biological term, the same term that you use in your life when you talk about eating. But there's something very different here, because when each of those ovules is fertilized and matures as the fruit matures, each of the ovules become a seed. Another term that you use in your life all the time. But the important thing here is, first, that flowers turn into fruits. That's not 100% correct, and I will tell you the exceptions. But it's 100% correct that fruits come from flowers. So all fruits come from originated in a flower that then was pollinated, fertilized, and matured. Not all flowers turn to fruits because not all flowers get pollinated or have their ovules, their ova in the ovules fertilized. And, interestingly enough, there are some flowers that just have male organs and no female organs, and obviously those could not bear fruit. And there are other flowers in the same species that would just have female organs, and those would bear the fruit. So not every flower turns into a fruit, or not every ovary from every flower turns into a fruit, but every fruit comes from a flower. And the other important and interesting fact is fruits are things that have seeds in them, which means that a lot of things that you think of as vegetables are actually fruits. Corn, green beans, squash, eggplant, okra, all of the cereal grains, rice, all of these things are fruits or the seeds from fruits, and they are technically not vegetables. Vegetables come from the non-reproductive parts of the plant that we call the vegetative parts of the plant. So things like cabbage and lettuce and all of the root vegetables are true vegetables, but it turns out that actually a slight majority of all the things you think of as vegetables are actually fruits in a biological sense. So, here you have the terminology. I'm missing a couple things. The pistil, as I said, very often you just have one pistil in a flower. Sometimes you have many. The collective term for pistils for all of the female parts is the gynoecium, which is the house of women. The swollen part at the end of a flower stalk is called the receptacle. The flower stalk itself has two names depending upon whether it's the main stalk or a subsidiary stalk. It's a peduncle if it's the main stalk. If a stalk then branches out to give you a whole array of flowers, which we call an inflorescence, then those smaller stalks are called pedicels, so you'll see both of those words. And a leaf that is associated with a flower or an inflorescence is called a bract. Thank you for your kind attention.